In this video, I'm going to give you a step-by-step roadmap to follow to get your first successful deep sky astrophotography image. If you're confused about what you need, what you don't, and how everything works in a setup like this video is for you. We intentionally chose this equipment setup because it's relatable, affordable, and has delivered us reliable results for many years now. Of course, you're free to build a setup on your own using whatever gear you want, but we've listed this one piece by piece in the description for you. Consider this to be an example system and routine for you to base your decisions off of. This isn't the only way to do astrophotography, but it's a formula that works. So get ready for a complete astrophotography how-to video that's easy to understand and doesn't leave anything out. So you've got a clear night ahead, you've got a project in mind, and it's the right time of year for it. You can use Astrospheric, Stellarium, Astrobin. These are all great planning tools for a night of astrophotography. Astrospheric gives you detailed cloud cover information like ground fog, high clouds, smoke. Stellarium is a simple planetarium tool that will show you exactly what the night sky will look like from your location. And Astrobin has advanced search tools to look for the target you're shooting, see examples, and the gear used to capture them. So at this point, you should know the general direction that your deep sky target is in or will be in the night sky, and hopefully the moon is not out. Well, unfortunately for us, the moon is out tonight and it's almost full, so can't win them all. We chose the photogenic NGC 7822, a bright nebula in the constellation Cepheus. Ashley's never shot this one before, and it's a target that will still turn out pretty nice even with that full moon out, with the right filter, of course. So you want to choose a spot in your yard or wherever you're set up that's relatively flat, dry, and has good clearance. No big trees or houses right up against you where your view to the stars, and especially the North Star, is obscured. For us, that's right here on the patio outside of the garage. It's nice and flat and dry, easy to load stuff out of the garage, and we can still see the North Star over the house. For this setup, we're using a ZWO ASI Air. This device replaces the laptop, software, drivers, and a whole bunch of headaches. The ASI Air is the hub or the brains of the entire system. Some people don't like the ASI Air because it caters towards their own cameras, the ZWO ASI cameras, which I totally understand. However, the owners of these little red boxes know how well they work and how easy they make things. As an old school astrophotographer who used a laptop computer for nearly a decade, it almost doesn't seem fair. This mini computer rides on top of the telescope and puts out a wireless signal for you to pick up on your mobile phone or tablet. This one is the ASI Air Pro, the second generation. Then you can just use the ASI Air app to do everything from taking pictures to moving the mount around. So the first thing you'll want to do is set up the tripod for your tracking mount, and you'll want it to be generally level. You can separate the mount head from the tripod if you want to make things a little lighter, or just keep it all attached if you don't care about your back. This is the Watcher EQ6R Pro, a very popular EQ astrophotography mount. There are new mounts that don't require counterweights out there, but this one is still very relevant in 2023, and this process I think applies to more people. Thankfully, this mount is compatible with the ASI Air, so we can control it using the app and do everything we need to with this Watcher mount. As you can see, we've run an extension cord from the garage over to the mount. It will require its own 12-volt power supply, and then we like to use a power bar like this, not just for the extra ports, but the USB slots for our dew heater bands as well. So we'll need to power the mount itself, and then we'll need to run power to the ASI Air Pro, which will power the camera and the other accessories. So this is the Celestron 12-volt 5-amp power supply that we use for the Watcher EQ6R Pro. It's a very specific adapter on the end there. We'll leave a link for this cord, but it's a reliable power source for the Watcher EQ6. You want to get your power source right for these mounts because they can start to act up if they don't get the kind of power that they want. Okay, we've got the counterweight on there. So you obviously want to get the rig well balanced, but you want to start with that counterweight on there first before you put the telescope on. Okay, so I think we can grab the telescope. This one is a William Optics Zenith Star 73 doublet apochromatic refractor. This one I just checked is still only about $750 US, brand new. So it's a great value if you ask me for a telescope of this size. So we can just mount it to the Vixen style dovetail mount on the EQ6. This one is a dual saddle. You can see a different mounting style just on the top here. This is the smaller one. She'll lock that in nicely. So at this point you can release the RA clutch, which is this one, and you can check how balanced you are with that counterweight in your primary imaging scope. We've got the camera on there too, but we'll be adding more accessories, but you want to make sure that initial balance is pretty good, and it looks pretty good. So when she leaves it to one side like that, it's not, you know, heavy to one side where it's swinging down. So it's pretty well evenly balanced, at least to start with. This telescope is nice and light. Not a problem for the EQ6R. This mount can hold 45 pounds, so a much larger telescope than this. You don't want to overdo it in terms of the weight of your telescope riding on your mount. In general, they say for astrophotography, keep it to about half of the maximum payload capacity, but you can definitely go a little over that. There's proof, we don't use it anymore. Spider webs. So Ashley's just putting in the guide camera. So this is used for auto guiding, which we'll get into a little later. But it's this mini camera, tiny little CMOS sensor in this small telescope riding on top of the primary imaging telescope and primary camera. We've attached a color camera to this telescope. This one is the ZWO ASI 533 MC Pro. It's a cooled, dedicated astronomy camera. This one's on the affordable side. So a CMOS sensor is the same one like you would find in a DSLR or mirrorless camera, except these ones are modified for astrophotography. They let in a specific wavelength of light in the red end of the spectrum that are only found in deep sky objects like emission nebulae. So this is the kind of sensor you want ideally for astrophotography. And to reiterate, this is an ASI camera. So this is compatible with that ASI Air mini computer. They can control a few DSLRs and mirrorless cameras as well, but the ASI Air works best with their ASI cameras. So this is the filter we'll be using tonight. It's the Optolong L Enhance. It's a multi-band pass narrowband filter that primarily lets in light from the H alpha and the O3 band passes, and we can just thread it into the 2-inch filter drawer and it will be sitting nicely in front of the camera. This is a great filter for heavily light polluted areas like in the city, and it works really well on nebula projects, specifically emission nebulae. So for your camera to perform optimally, you need the correct back spacing. So it's this spacing here between the camera sensor and the threads of, in this case, the flattener or the rear of the focuser of the telescope. So for this camera and telescope, it's 55 millimeters. And we had to take that into account when we put in this filter drawer, and it had the right spacing in between there. So getting that back spacing correct is essential, and you can find that information online depending on which camera and telescope you're using, but you want to get that right. This telescope requires a field flattener to perform at its best. It's an optical element that sits at the rear of the telescope. This one is called the William Optics Flat 73, and it's built specifically for this William Optics Z73 scope. So without a field flattener, you will not have a flat field. You'll see coma at the edges, and you'd especially see that if you're using a large image sensor. So it's definitely a recommended upgrade for your telescope, and this one costs about 200 bucks. So the other little camera sitting on top of the main one is the guide camera. This one has a tiny sensor and it looks through this guide scope, and its only job is to look at the stars in the field pointed in the same direction as the primary camera and just measure the movement of the stars to perform auto guiding. We'll use the ASI Air to handle the auto guiding, but that's the guide scope and guide camera that are used for that task. So you can mount the ASI Air device right to the telescope, which is great for cabling reasons because then everything's nice and tight and close with each other. And you can mount it however you want. We chose this low-tech solution of Velcro, and because the unit's so light, we can just stick it right there and it holds on securely. So the first thing we'll power up is the ASI Air itself, which requires a 12-volt 5-amp. You can see it there. Ash will just plug it into the back. We'll plug in the other end to the power bar, and then we'll have enough power for that ASI Air riding along with the telescope. The ASI Air Pro has power outputs, so we can power the camera through the ASI Air Pro. So Ash will plug in the camera in the power port and then into the one slot for the power output. So that is now powered. And now she can plug in the primary imaging camera and the guide camera via USB cables. That one there is a USB 3 cable. That one just plugs into the back of the camera and then into one of the blue USB 3 spots on the ASI Air Pro. For the guide camera, we have a USB Type-C cable that will plug into the back of the camera, and then the other end of it into the USB 2.0 port on the ASI Air Pro. Now this is a very important cable to have. This is the connection between the ASI Air and the Watcher EQ6 mount. So we'll plug in the USB side into the USB 2.0 port of the ASI Air, and then the other connection goes into the hand control port on the Watcher EQ6. Okay, last but not least, you want to plug in your USB thumb drive for image storage. So do you have that on you? Perfect. Okay, nice 32 gig. And that goes into one of the USB 3.0 ports on the ASI Air. Getting a little tough to see. So we've got all the slots filled now. We've got the mount, the storage, the primary camera, and the guide camera. So ideally you want to clean up and tuck away these cables as best as possible because you don't want them getting caught on anything, and you can do a lot better job than this. But believe it or not, these long draping cables, nothing will snag, and this will actually work. It's just doesn't look the prettiest. One change we're going to make at this point is to actually rotate the telescope so that the focuser's on the top. This will just allow us to get a better balance in the declination for this system. So I had to kind of unplug everything, put it back together, but this comes up from time to time. So I forgot, for this particular scope, you want to rotate it so the focuser's actually on top, and then that gives us the clearance to actually move the dovetail rail upwards for a better balance in declination. So that's this axis here. And as you can imagine, if it's heavy at the back, it'll fall down, heavy at the front, vice versa. So this is a better balance. We're able to move it up by rotating the whole scope with the focuser on top. So it looks upside down, but better balance. So once you've got everything connected, you want to do one final balance with the counterweights, making sure that the right ascension, the RA, and the declination are both in balance. So we found with this scope, it was a little back heavy, so we just did a quick rotation of the scope to put the focuser on top. That allowed us to move it up quite a bit actually on the saddle, and now it's in a much better shape. It's better balanced. We can plug in the dew heater bands now, which are pretty well a must in our area. So these are the USB type, where we can just wrap them around the objective lens of the telescope and the guide scope, and then plug them into the USB, and they'll just warm up ever so slightly just to prevent dew from accumulating on the objective lenses. With everything connected and ready to go, we can now power on the ASI Air Pro and turn on the mount and get all our devices connected using the ASI Air app. Okay, it's good and dark out now. I see a nearly full moon rising, and we're ready to polar align the telescope mount and get ourselves set up for a night of imaging. So I'm going to switch over to the ASI Air screen now, which I'm recording, and we can kind of take a look at things there. So the first thing you'll want to do is make sure you're connected to the Air via Wi-Fi. So right now I'm connected to my home network, so I'm going to have to go into the connection settings and then select the ASI Air from the drop-down. There it is there, and it's going to connect. Now it's going to give me a warning about not having an internet connection, which is totally normal. This is a different type of Wi-Fi connection that it needs. Okay, so I'm going to open up the ASI Air now, the app, enter the device, and this is where we need to enter in some information like your location details, the mount you're using, and your telescope focal length. So for us, we were already on it there, but say you're using ZWO AM5, it's near the top there. The one we want for the Watcher EQ6 is in Watcher, so it's the AZGTI SynScan Wi-Fi. That's the one you want for the EQ6. For the main camera, we have our ASI 533MC Pro appears there, so we'll select that. The guide camera is the 120mm Mini, so as long as your cameras are connected, they'll appear there, and you just need to make sure that you have them. So the main scope focal length for my primary imaging scope is 430, I believe. And then for the guide scope, it is 200. So with that all correct, you can just say enter, and then you'll go into the main user interface screen of the ASI Air. Just gonna move this guy out of the way here for a second. The first thing you wanna do is make sure that you're roughly in focus with your primary camera. And you can do that by being in preview mode here and just taking a 2-second exposure. This is what our primary imaging camera and telescope sees right now. I believe we're roughly in focus, so we won't have to change much, but you may be quite a ways out. Oh, it looks like we are out because I don't see any stars. So at this point I should mention too that I've taken that light pollution filter out of the filter drawer. We want full light gathering ability for this portion. We'll put that in right before we actually start imaging. So to find our rough focus, I'm gonna go into focus mode and press play. And so you can see that exposure length on the right there is 2 seconds. It's gonna do a loop of the screen, and this will allow us to change the focus of the telescope, and then it should in real time show if we're seeing any stars in focus or not. It looks like I'm almost seeing a couple there. Yep, I see a few stars, very faint. Very good, okay, so I think we're pretty close right here. I'm gonna leave it at that. And now I'm just gonna get out of focus mode and go to preview and take a 2-second preview image. This should be a full frame view of our camera and telescope right now, where it's seeing pointed roughly north. Okay, good, yes, I see some stars in there and I see some weird reflections, but that is me shining my light through the open filter drawer, so nothing to worry about there. Just a slight hiccup there. Didn't like that the filter drawer lid wasn't back on the drawer there, and it was letting in a lot of light leak from that full moon. So it was causing problems with the plate solving. So we're back in business. Back to polar alignment, play. It's gonna take a picture, a rather quick one, and then just read the positions of the stars. It took a whole 1.2 seconds. When you hit next, it's gonna rotate the RA axis of the scope. You can hear it buzzing away there. And this may seem kind of excessive for this kind of boring stage, but getting your polar alignment right, being aligned with the North Celestial Pole, is everything in astrophotography. There's no point in even setting up if you're not gonna take the time to get this right. And luckily this tool makes it pretty quick and painless, and kind of fun, to be honest. Kind of gamifies it. Okay, so we say let's go. Now we've got our total error of 35, which is way off. So it looks like we're in the azimuth where we're way off, the left to right. So you can see where it's saying to move left 35 degrees. Let's see. I might have just made it worse. It's a bit of trial and error here. So it's all about making a slight adjustment to the bolts and then refreshing. Yeah, I went the wrong way. There we go. See where that's at. That was a pretty aggressive turn. And when it comes to adjusting these bolts and polar alignment, a little turn makes a big difference. So get ready for that. So you can see in the top right that it's improving. See, we're getting that circle dialed in even closer. So we're at 28, and I'm gonna turn it just about that much. You'll really get a feel for this and get pretty good at it. And you can kind of try and beat your record of how fast you can polar align. So if that's what it was from 28 to 16, I would say that that's probably about another 16. I'm gonna refresh it again. 5, we're getting very close now. Just a little smidge refresh. 128, I'll just do the tiniest little one and then we'll move on to the altitude. Little hair. So that should be pretty close in azimuth. Oh, I went too far. Whoa, made up for it with that one. Look at that. A round of applause, please. Okay, now we got to go up 359. That is a very tiny little movement. There we go. That was pretty tiny. Still might have been too much. 121. Yeah, I got to go back down the tiniest little amount. Sometimes just easing off one of the bolts is enough to make the change, as opposed to turning anything. Yep. Lots of fun. 411. If you notice the little smiley face there, he smiles as you're getting closer. He's hopefully going to keep that smile after that one. 151. $124. There, that should be it. Because I know you guys are having so much fun watching this. Okay, perfect. We've got our total error of 23 seconds there. So that's our 0.23 seconds. I don't know how they call it, but so if it was a 1.00 would be 1 arc second, and anywhere below that, you're pretty well dialed in and you can be happy with it. So I'm going to say finish. And now we'll click on the mount icon at the top, scroll down and just say go home. Okay, we are polar aligned. That's a good feeling. So you don't want to move the mount anymore after this. We're nicely polar aligned and we can now move on to finding our target, pointing at it, and dialing our focus. Now that the mount is pointing home, we can go ahead and get back into preview mode. And this is where we're going to actually start getting close to our target and frame it up. But first, we just want to really dial in that focus using a batten-off mask on a bright star. So the target we want to shoot is NGC 7822. Now that's in Cepheus around here somewhere. This is the Sky Atlas star map on the ASI Air. I absolutely love it. As you zoom in, you start to see this visual overlay of deep sky objects. And sure enough, that's the object we want right there, NGC 7822. So we can search with the little magnifying glass here. There's tonight's best, but we want search. And I'm going to type in NGC, what was it, 7822. Boom. And then we can hit the little blue arrow and go to. Now the mount is going to slew to that area. In a nice position. Far enough away from that full moon. And now it's just going to take some pictures to confirm its alignment. There'll probably be a little bit of a shift to, there you go. So that's where the scope's pointed, that's where it's going. It was slightly off. And it will confirm. And the best part about this is you can see your image frame, how you framed it up, because it looks like the actual NGC designation for this object is kind of that one side of the object, where now I can manually drag my finger down and actually frame it up for all the good bits myself, which is really nice. So you can do some real custom precise framing with this tool. That's good. I know roughly where we're at. Before that, I kind of just want to point to a really bright star to focus with our narrow band filter. Okay, CAF is very close. So before I go straight to our object, I'm just going to hop over to CAF, which is nearby. So not a huge movement. Just zoom in here, center CAF, and go to. Like I said, it's not far. And then I'll grab my batten-off mask. If you don't have one, these are pretty inexpensive. A lot of the William Optics scopes actually come with them built in now, which I love. Okay, wait for it to plate solve. And now I'm going to put the batten-off mask on. Cool. And more importantly, the filter we're using to image with is going in now, because we want to focus with that filter. So I'm just going to get that in there. And you really realize all the smudges and dust on your filters when you shine a light at them. It's best not to look at that. That's what flats are for. All right, are we in there? Or a weird angle. Good. And now we'll just step out of the Sky Atlas and over to focus and start playing that. You'll see a big bright star and some massive star spikes. Okay, so we were roughly in focus, but we can do better. So I'm just gonna put the box right there and then hit the zoom button on the left, and we can really get precise with it. So this is a live loop of that star with the Bahtinov mask in. As I make an adjustment, there you go. Look at that central spike shift. You want it totally in the middle between the X. That's the name of the game. Getting very close. That looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to call that done, and we can take the Bahtinov mask off now. And I would recommend refocusing a little later on, maybe in an hour or so, as the temperature cools off, because it's still kind of warm on this patio, but it's going to cool right off. And when the temperature changes, usually so does the focus. And if there's a focuser lock screw on the scope, try to tighten that up too, so you don't slide out of focus. Okay, good. We're focused. I am going to get out of the zoom, go back to preview, and we're just going to hop back over to NGC 7822. And in this case, I think we can leave the filter in and it'll still be able to plate solve. But you can see how with a really harsh filter, maybe it would be better to take it out for the plate solving just so it could read enough stars. This L-Enhance is mild enough where I think it'll actually work. So let's frame this up just the way we want it. I think we can all agree that this is the right way to frame this beautiful nebula. And we'll say go to. And hopefully I'm not eating my words and that it wasn't a mistake to leave that filter in while doing the plate solve. Okay, excellent. We are centered. This is great stuff. We're in a very good position now. Now we're into the auto guiding. So you hit the guide button on the left here, and then that little window, the little graph is there, and we can click on it to open it up, and we're just going to hit the loop button on the right. Auto guiding has never been easier, guys. I'm going to take the cover off the guide scope for starters. Always a good start. And now we're seeing a live loop through the guide scope. Now, because we just put this camera in today, it could be really far off out of focus. And because these ones are so simple, it's just literally sliding this 1.25 inch, eyepiece size camera in this tube. It's as simple as moving it in and out to find focus. And it's not uncommon for it to be way, way out to where you think the camera's broken. Let's see. We're so far out now, the thing's almost fallen out, so I have a feeling I gotta go the other way. Yeah, we're going the other way. Back in. Until we see some stars. It'll start with a big, fat, out of focus star. And you can adjust your gain settings here too. My gain's a bit high here, so it's there might be better contrast if it was using a lower gain. But the refresh rate is much faster than, say, the focus mode for the main camera. We're at 0.5 frames per second. We'll get there, guys, and it'll be so worth it. So I see one. Auto guiding is one of those things that once you learn how to do it, you'll never go back. And it's just, 5-minute exposures are no problem. You're getting the most out of your mount. You're getting, you can do all sorts of longer exposure projects. For mounts like the AM5 strain wave, you must auto guide basically. So the ASI Air makes it really easy. So all I'm doing here is just getting those stars nice and pinpointy, like that. And then I'm gonna just lock this in Remember, this is the guide camera, not the primary camera now. We already focused that one. Looping is going. Now we hit the guide button on the right, and it's going to perform a calibration. So this takes about 1 minute. It's not a big deal at all. It's called multi-star guiding. You can see it's selected all these candidate stars to use for guiding purposes. And it's just going to move them around and make sure that the mount and the camera are communicating together for proper auto guiding. So it's going to do these steps. And while it's doing that, we can shrink that down. And instead of preview mode, we're now going to get into our auto run plan. So if we see the 3 bars underneath that, we'll hit that. And I'm just going to close this old project out. And here is so the first thing you want to do is name this, because your file names will have this. I'll just say NGC 7822. Done. And we're going to hit the plus for the shooting schedule. We're taking light frames. These are, basic picture files. Exposure, I'm going to keep it at 300 seconds, a full 5 minutes. Global gain on this camera is about 100, or we can just physically pick 100, as long as we keep it the same. And that's kind of unity gain, middle of the road setting I recommend for this camera. And then the repeat is how many shots we're going to take. So I think we'll at least take 30, but there's no harm in overshooting it for 60, as if we're going to get 5 hours on this, because we'll be checking up on it later and we can make changes. So I'll say okay. That bin 1 is just the full resolution of the camera, highly recommended. So that's all we're doing for our shooting schedule so far. This is telling the camera, the ASI Air, to take 60 5-minute shots. Just to get this off the screen, I'll just take a preview shot here, and this is going to be in the middle of calibrating, so you'll see some star motion here. But we're good. Our filter's in, we're polar aligned, we're auto guiding, we're about to anyway. You see on the star map that we're totally framed up beautifully on our target. We've got our auto run plan set up. Once this calibration run, it's almost done, is finished, we will be auto guiding, and then we can officially press play and start running our imaging plan, which is so exciting. And then, maybe at this point the wheels are spinning, thinking about processing the object and getting excited about it there. But yeah, that's basically all there is to it with the ASI Air. And this is really a lot faster and more streamlined than the old school way I used to do this with a hand controller and kind of going back and forth trying to frame things up. So things are good right now. All right, that's that. And why don't we wait until this finishes and we'll take our first subframe together. How's that sound? I won't make you wait the full 5 minutes till it comes through, but it is a good idea to check on that first sub, make sure nothing's went wrong there, as opposed to just heading inside and just leaving it for 5 hours. You definitely want to check up on things, and as I said, I'll probably want to refocus in about an hour. South, it's almost done. And once it is calibrated, it will show you the guide graph, and this is what people obsess about. You can see it started here, those 2 little lines. So the RA is in blue, the declination's in red, and they're doing their little dance there. And the total RMS error, the total at the 0.12 right now, 0.37, these are all really good values you want to see. There's very good guiding happening right now. So it looks like we're going to hover around 0.5. Excellent, excellent. The EQ6 is such a bulletproof mount. Okay, we're good. We're guiding. I'm going to press play on our run. Oops, I pressed it on the preview. Auto run. Play. Okay, and it's counting down from 300 seconds. Boom. We did it, guys. Okay, the imaging session is complete. I actually got 2 nights on NGC 7822, so pretty exciting stuff. But before we can start processing the image, you'll want to make sure that you have calibration frames. Now, these are just image files that will help support the stacking process and create a better master image to work with. The first ones are pretty easy. These are called dark frames. These are the same exposure length and temperature as your light frames, but with the lens cap on your telescope. So at the end of your session, when it's still dark out, is a good time to take these shots, and you'll want to take about 15 of them. The next one is bias frames. These ones are easier. It is the fastest possible exposure your camera can take, again with that lens cap on. The third one is flat frames. These can be a little bit finicky, but luckily the ASI Air has a great tool to help you get these right, to get the right exposure. So for these, I stretch a white t-shirt over the objective lens of the telescope and shoot towards that morning sky. You can also use a light panel to help control the brightness here, but you'll probably want to diffuse it again with a t-shirt. So use the auto exposure mode in the ASI Air to get these flat frames correct. This is kind of what they should look like. Now that we have all our calibration frames, we can get into the image stacking of our data so we can finally start processing the image. Now I'm going to move a little bit quickly on this, but I did say that I would cover absolutely everything and not leave anything out from this start to finish process. So we're about to get into it. I do have a complete image processing guide that covers absolutely everything you could possibly want to know in the description. So that's an option for you too. Okay, here we are in Deep Sky Stacker. Let's put our image together. So if we go into our main folder here, you can see I have everything organized: lights, darks, bias, and flats. If we go into our light frames, I'm just going to change it to details. So these are all the fit files that the camera took. And I'm just going to go ahead and select all of the light frames that we took, not the JPEG preview files that the ASI Air also creates. Those are handy, but those aren't what we want to stack. So our light frames are loaded in. Before we look any deeper into those, we'll select the dark frames. Again, darks, 300 seconds, same temperature. And then we'll select our bias files. Same folder, bias. 10 of those, 10 darks, 10 to 15 is good. And now our flats. Flats, 15 of those. Okay, now everything's here, and if we click check all, you can see that we have 141 light frames, 10 dark frames, 15 flats, and 10 bias. So if we want to look at a single image here, we can just click on it. And then because it's pretty dark, which is typical, we can move this slider at the top right up. And it's really hard to tell the nebula is in there, but we know that it is. So this is what our single image frame looks like, and then we've got 141 of them. So the first thing you want to do here is I would do register checked pictures. And then we're not going to stack them yet. We just want to register them to get a score for them. So click OK. And what registering is, it just aligns up all the frames with each other. And in this process, it's also going to measure the star size, the sky brightness, and basically assign a quality score to all these light frames. And the reason you want to do that is because you can stack only the highest quality frames. So whether that's 60% of the frames we took, or hopefully 80 to 90%, we'll have a better image by rejecting the frames that are not doing us any favors. So now that it's finished that, we can click score, and it will sort them by the score here. So this is our best frame here, frame number 29. And that means that the stars were sharp, the sky brightness wasn't too bright, there wasn't any trouble guiding or tracking. And so what you can do now is go down to the bottom of the list, and we'll just get rid of all of the ones with a really terrible score. So if you look at this one here that got a 4.18, it's because there was something happened in the tracking where you can see the stars are trailing. So that one's obvious. And I think there's going to be some in here where the sky got so bright because I kind of started shooting into the morning sky. So these two, it looks like there's something. Yep, definitely that one looks a little bit bright. 5 minutes into that morning sun. So we'll get rid of those right away. And this one. So we've only got rid of about 5 frames so far. So there's a few ways to go about this where you can just manually remove these from the list. And You can scroll over to see more info about the full width half maximum and the number of stars. Those are all the star quality. And now, before we stack, we'll go to check above a threshold. So a minimum score of 400. We'll say OK. And now it's only checked frames with a score of 400 or over. And now we can stack these pictures. We've got all our calibration frames, our best light frames, and it looks like we're going to hit a total of 8 hours and 25 minutes. One last thing is you want to enable this 2x drizzle here. That will help with the resolution. It's going to double the size of the image. We'll bring it back down. It's said to increase image quality. It's just something I always do. So we'll say OK, and it's going to go through and create this master file. Once that's done, we'll take a look at it in Adobe Photoshop, and we're getting closer and closer to that finished image. Okay, now we're in Photoshop, and we will take a look at our master calibrated file. So go to the folder where your images were, and by default, Deep Sky Stacker will put it in your light frame folder and create a file called autosave. Now this is a large TIFF file. It's large because it's in 32-bit mode, and it's also large because we drizzled it by 2 times, which doubled it in size. The first thing we'll do here is just do a simple crop. You can see the overlap of the images from where the frame kind of shifted due to dithering and other things, but it's totally normal. We didn't lose much. So we'll just go to Image, Crop. Next, we're going to change the image size back down to its native resolution. So right now it's double. We're going to go to % and change that to 50. Okay, here's our working file that we're going to start playing with. So next, we're going to change the mode to 16 bits per channel. So 32-bit mode is, yes, there's more color information in the image, but there's less options of what you can do to that image in Photoshop when you leave it in 32-bit mode. So we've converted it to 16-bit, and we're going to make sure, I just didn't want you to miss that step, that in the HDR toning box that pops up that you want to choose exposure and gamma. We're not going to make any of those HDR default changes to the image. Here we go. Okay, so now when we look at the levels and adjustments levels, we can see the color information there. Obviously the picture looks very green, which is typical of this filter, but there is lots of information hiding in there. So the first thing we'll do is go to curves, and then I'm just going to bring up the data like this. And then I'm going to go into it again and just do it again. Now I'll bring the levels in on the shadow side. And now let's look at the channels. Look at the differences here. So the red channel, very dark, but we can see the nebula. Awesome. It's a very red emission nebula. The green is super overpowering, and the blue is kind of somewhere in the middle. So what we could do right away with the levels is open levels again and go to the green and just bring that slider down. We'll do the same with the blue. This is kind of an easy way to just balance it out of the gate. And now we'll go back to the red channel because we can kind of see what's going on here. And why don't we, with this channel selected, bring just the red channel up. Very cool. And now we can kind of see the areas of light and dark where it's the nebula and not the sky. So knowing that information, when we go back to the RGB, within the levels you can do the set gray point. So if we select that and put that here, we have a more balanced image. Go back to curves. And now we're starting to see the beautiful nebula the way it was intended to be seen. That red is overpowering for this image just because of the type of target it is and the filter we used, which primarily isolated the hydrogen alpha. But this should give you a better idea of the underlying image that you have in there. And there's so many things you can do from here. Ones that stand out to me are to bring up the greens and the blues in the image, which will have to be done carefully. Better color balance. You can minimize the star size. You could do some noise reduction. You could create a luminance layer based off that really bright red channel. So many incredible things to do. You can do them all here in Photoshop, or you could use a tool like PixInsight that has dedicated tools for this type of thing. In both cases, it's going to require a lot of learning and education on image processing. There's plenty of great tutorials out there on YouTube by myself and by others. Nico Carver has some great ones, Nebula Photos, Sean Nielsen, Visible Dark Astro. Those are two to check out for sure. But I wanted you to at least see the process of getting to an image that's ready to be really enhanced. And as you can see, we're just about there with this one.